What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, back with a look at the Week 2 NFL main slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. Welcome back. Hope everybody had a successful Week 1. If not, hope you just enjoyed the start of another NFL season. We're here to walk through the best plays for this week's slate and try to turn that around for you. We got 12 games on the main slate this week. There are 8 in the early 1 p.m. window here on the East Coast and 4 in the afternoon window. See on the screen, my favorite play on this slate is one of those 4 p.m. window running backs. It's Dallas Cowboys starter Tony Pollard. Dallas Cowboys are the biggest favorites on this slate against the New York Jets, who now have to deal with the loss of Aaron Rodgers, unfortunately, for the rest of this season after that Achilles injury on Monday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills. But as we like to do here, we like to go through the teams that are the biggest favorites in betting markets on this slate, because that highlights the running backs that are most likely to be in the most favorable game scripts for opportunity here. Here in Week 2, Dallas favored by 9.5 against the Jets. Tony Pollard, far and away in the best spot to succeed. I expect him to end up as the most popular running back play on this slate in both low and high risk contests, and I'm more than happy to play him myself. The next biggest favorite on this slate, it's the Buffalo Bills. We saw James Cook lead this backfield on Monday Night Football against the New York Jets. Was not the most favorable game script for the Bills on Monday Night Football, but Cook did still manage to have 12 carries and 6 targets in that game. I expect a much better performance here against the Las Vegas Raiders. Favored by 8.5 points, James Cook of the Buffalo Bills, facing what graded out as a below-average rush defense from the Raiders after just 1 week of play. Small samples here, but James Cook in a good spot to succeed for the Bills as another running back who's heavily favored. San Francisco favored by 7.5 points on the road against the Rams this week. We saw him have a couple of big plays last week. We've seen him have big plays his whole career. No surprise, Christian McCaffrey is going to be one of the better plays on the board. You're just going to have to pay quite a bit for it. $8,900 here on DraftKings and $9,500 over on FanDuel, the most expensive running back on the slate by far on both sites. But we like McCaffrey, just given the game script and the environment for sure. Finally, the last offense that we think is in a very favorable spot for the running backs this week, it's the Detroit Lions. Favored by 5.5 points here against the Seattle Seahawks at home. David Montgomery out-carried Jahmyr Gibbs at a 3-to-1 clip. He had 21 rush attempts to just 7 for Jahmyr Gibbs. Did not have any involvement in the passing game. Now, we know that the Lions want to get Gibbs more involved and scale up his volumes as the season moved on here, but I would side with David Montgomery as the safer play here, especially for some goal line opportunity to maybe fall into the end zone for the Lions in their matchup with Seattle. Seattle, a slightly below average rush defense to this point, and Detroit also boasting some great run blocking, again, just through 1 week of play, so these splits are not super valuable, but it looks good for the Lions here, particularly David Montgomery against the Seahawks. How are the betting markets shaking out? Early here in the week, it is Thursday afternoon. That's when I'm recording this video for the Week 2 main slate. We have the Kansas City Chiefs and the Jacksonville Jaguars as the highest total game on the board with 51 points. We have the Buffalo Bills and the Las Vegas Raiders with 47.5 points. Detroit, Seattle also with 47.5 points. Now, the favored side of each of those 3 games, Buffalo, Kansas City, and Detroit, they're all going to have 3 of the highest implied team totals on this slate. So yeah, we like these offenses for stacks this week. We like those games for stacks this week. Some other teams that have high totals in betting markets, San Francisco and the Cincinnati Bengals, just because they are favored by a decent amount in relatively high total games. More on game stacks in a little bit here. Given all of this information, the consensus of it, my favorite quarterback play on this slate, it's one of the things that I like to do, particularly after a bad game, believe it or not, is go right back to the well with Josh Allen. I think the Achilles heel for Buffalo in Week 1 was some poor pass and run blocking on the offensive line. Obviously, Josh Allen made a ton of mistakes as far as interceptions and fumbles are concerned, but we can't expect that to continue at that high of a rate all season long. Expect a little bit of a bounce back here against a Raiders defense that was somewhat below average against both the pass and the run. Josh Allen actually grades out as the highest projected fantasy point quarterback on the median for me this week in Week 1, so I love Josh Allen, especially as a tournament option. In low-risk contests, I think I'm going right back to the well with the skill set that we saw from Anthony Richardson. Just $6,300 upgraded by about $700 compared to Week 1, but we saw exactly what we wanted out of him against the Jacksonville Jaguars. A decent involvement in the running game. He had 10 carries, and he was airing it out. Not a very deep average depth of target from Anthony Richardson, but we expect that to improve as he gets more comfortable and as the season marches on. I like the upside here in a significantly easier matchup against the Houston Texans for Richardson. So for me, Richardson, my favorite low-risk quarterback of the week. Tony Pollard, my favorite low-risk running back of the week. Now, some low-risk wide receivers you can consider. I think there are a couple that are slightly mispriced after big games in week 1, and it is a pair of rookies that I expect to be popular. Baltimore's Zay Flowers had 10 targets last week, and he came in at just $5,000. The field is going to flock to him here. And the other one, he had 15 targets with Matthew Stafford under center. Puka Nacua coming in at just $4,900. I think you will see a lot of players just get these two guys in their low-risk lineups this week, and I'm not going to argue with it. The other value on this slate that you can jam into a low-risk lineup is actually at the tight end position. And it's the tight end from the Denver Broncos that should be starting this game. Adam Troutman had 5 targets last week. Greg Dulcich is not going to play here in week 2. Greg Dulcich had a decent amount of opportunity in week 1 before he left with an injury. So Troutman is going to be the main guy here, just $3,000. Tons of upside at that price. Very good low-risk play at a tight end. We have $58.25 per player remaining for a low-risk lineup now based off of the way that I have built this thus far. My favorite thing to do is look at the Occupy model a little bit closer to lock on Sunday and see where ownership is condensing on certain plays. So like at the running back position, if we sort by DraftKings ownership, I mentioned I think Pollard will end up the most popular play. Right now he's number 4. The most popular play on the board right now, kind of interesting, James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona, a 5-point underdog against the New York Giants, but the New York Giants defense was pretty bad in week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. So I think the field is sort of looking at that and potentially going to talk themselves into playing James Conner in this spot if he is able to play. He is questionable with a calf injury at this point, so I would expect some things to move around here. We've got Josh Jacobs of the Raiders, another large underdog projected for high ownership in the model right now. Personally, I think this is kind of noisy. I would expect this to drop a little bit as well. I don't think the field typically plays double-digit underdogs at running back, and he's pretty close to that with the Raiders' 9.5-point underdogs at this point. Christian McCaffrey, yep, I think people will play him. I think the salary is a little exorbitant based off of what I'm trying to do here. We've got a pairing of running backs I talked about at the top of the video. Tony Pollard, my favorite play at the position. James Cook with the Bills, just $6,100 here on DraftKings, $6,600 on FanDuel in virtually an every down roll. That's probably a place the field will go. I actually think Joe Mixon's a decent play here. Had a very, very strong role in week 1 in a super poor game script for the Bengals. Even given how poor that game went for Cincinnati, we saw Mixon have a very strong carry and target role at the running back position. So as a slight favorite against the Ravens, I would expect the field to go here. And then, of course, we've got David Montgomery with the Lions as well, another running back that I talked about at the beginning of the video. I don't think you can go wrong with considering any of these guys as a second or third running back here in low risk. As far as other wide receivers are concerned in our model, we love the Bengals pairing of Chase and Higgins. We've got Stephon Diggs here from the Bills ranked pretty highly. I'm looking at Amon-Ra St. Brown as a great low risk play. Projects for some of the highest ownership on the slate. We project over 9 targets for him. So I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is where I am going to go for a third low risk wide receiver here. We expect, based off of some correlation with James Conner being very popular, Arizona defense to be pretty popular against the New York Giants, a little bit of a pay up for Dallas Cowboys against Zach Wilson and the Jets, and Tampa Bay against the Chicago Bears. These are going to be your 3 most popular defenses. So in low risk contests, I think it's okay to match the field with a popular defense. Given Arizona is relatively affordable, I think we can do that here. I think we can go to the running back position now, and we can find 2 other guys that have pretty good looking game scripts that fit the salary criteria that we have remaining here and have a really strong low risk lineup in week 2. I think this is a really strong core to build around for your low risk builds this weekend. Now, high risk contests. I like to look at game stacks. We have 3 that are going to be in the plug this week, unless anything changes over the next day or so. I am high on Buffalo and Las Vegas. It's my favorite high-risk game stack on here that we can play. So I'll show you a little bit of what I'm thinking about here with that. Josh Allen and the Bills in their home opener are going to look to wash a poor taste out of their mouths after that loss to the Jets in overtime on Monday Night Football. I think you can go with Allen and Diggs, and you can even go the route of adding Gabe Davis in here and having a double stack with those wide receivers. I think we are going to see a situation where Jacoby Myers is going to be out because of a concussion that he suffered on Sunday. Best wishes to him. Hope he recovers soon. But that should open up some opportunity for Hunter Renfrow to play a lot more in the passing game. Renfrow was kind of lost in the sauce, so to speak, in week 1. There were a trio of Raider wide receivers who played a handful of snaps behind both Adams and Myers. It was Renfrow, it was Christian Wilkerson, and it was DeAndre Carter. Renfrow being the one with the highest pedigree of this bunch and a track record of hitting a ceiling in the past, I think is the best bet to see an increased workload if Myers misses the game. So he's the cheap wide receiver I would like to use as a bringback here for a Raider Bills 3-1 game stack. You can add in a cheap tight end, you can add in Puka or Zay Flowers as a 4th wide receiver and have plenty of salary to make the rest of this lineup work, in my opinion. You could even come off of Gabe Davis and play either Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox at tight end to make it work and have even more salary flexibility doing it this way. So I think there's a lot of different ways that this game stack can reach the top of some of these contests here in week 2. Kansas City and Jacksonville is very tough on the Kansas City side, but it's pretty clear what I think the field will end up doing. It's going to be Mahomes. It's going to be Travis Kelce at tight end. We expect him to return. Calvin Ridley is probably going to be the most popular wide receiver to play as a bringback in a Kansas City stack. Also think he has significant low-risk appeal, $600 cheaper than Amon-Ra St. Brown here on DraftKings. So even though he's more expensive over on FanDuel, I think Ridley also low-risk appeal here. So got a 2-1 here. Now, I don't know if you need to add on to this, but if you wanted to, plenty of these Chiefs wide receivers are cheap. MVS is playing every snap for them. Tony, look, I know the field is low on him, but the opportunity is there. They force him the ball when he is on the field, and I think they will continue to do that. Sky Moore played a lot of snaps, didn't get a lot of looks. Rashee Rice didn't play a lot of snaps, got a lot of looks, very cheap. You can add a 3rd Kansas City Chief, one of these cheap pass catchers. Justin Watson even had a pretty decent amount of opportunity in his limited snaps that he played and have plenty of salary to build around this 3-1 game stack in week 2 as well. Now, my final game stack that I really think has a ton of upside is Baltimore and Cincinnati. No one wants to play the Bengals after the dud in week 1, but we can get Burrow, we can get Chase and Higgins, and we can get a very cheap Zay Flowers in here, use some of the punts I talked about in the beginning of the video, and we can get to a very usable lineup here in week 2 in tournaments by stacking the Ravens and the Bengals. Not only that, Chase and Higgins, 2 of our 3 highest ranked wide receivers of the entire week in the Occupy model. That's usually a sign that we like a stack in tournaments when we see something like that. So Bengals, yeah, it was ugly in week 1, but we expect to bounce back from them. They are going to be one of our favorite tournament stacks of the week. So I want to recap what I went through here really quickly. Kind of a 10-15 minute preview of week 2 is what we typically do here in these videos. Daily plug will hit occupyfantasy.com on Friday evening by about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the absolute latest. In there, we'll go into more detail on our favorite plays at each position, our favorite stacks that you can play, how to build lineups using those stacks. We'll even give you some tips on some contests that we think are worth playing on DraftKings and FanDuel here in week 2. Low risk. Quick recap, I think you absolutely are going to want Tony Pollard as the biggest favorite on the slate for the Dallas Cowboys against the New York Jets. Make him one of the running backs that you play without question. At the quarterback position, there are only 2 that I'm super interested in. Josh Allen in a bounce back spot against the Raiders, or Anthony Richardson yet again here against the Houston Texans. I'm fine with using Richardson given the salary and the upside against the Texans defense. Wide receiver, there's a pair of cheap wide receivers I think you want to have in your low-risk lineup. Zay Flowers from the Ravens had a ton of targets last week, should see a ton of work moving forward. Puka Nacua from the Rams should continue to have a rather large role as well. Tight end position, you can play a very cheap Adam Troutman from the Denver Broncos. We expect the field to be doing this, so it's okay to pay down at tight end and do this as well. And this is a really strong core to build around in low risk. Add on a couple of favored running backs, add on another high upside wide receiver, and that should be pretty good and get you close to where you want to go here in week 2 in low risk contests, 50-50s, head-to-heads, double-ups. Good luck here in week 2 of the NFL. We'll be back to talk with you about week 3's main slate next Thursday, same time, same place. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you next time.